my name is Georgia Tucker with Cambridge House. Today I'm talking with Byron King of Agora Financial. Byron writes and edits the newsletter Whiskey and Gunpowder, a free, thrice-weekly publication sharing social and political insights through an economic lens. Byron is also a Harvard-trained geologist and served in the U.S. Navy for many years. The CEO of one of Byron's favorite companies is also joining us in discussion today, Matt Turner of Rockhaven Resources. Rockhaven are a gold company exploring and developing in Canada's Yukon. If you like the video, and I hope you do, please hit like and subscribe to our channel. For more investing insights from Cambridge House, please follow us at Cambridge on Twitter. And if you click the link in the pinned comment below, you can receive our weekly newsletter to your email. Thanks and enjoy. Okay, welcome, Byron. Pleasure to have you with me today all the way from Pittsburgh. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Well, let's dive right in, shall we? I always love hearing your insight. So you've claimed that gold is the ultimate way to preserve wealth. If you're talking to someone that thinks gold's archaic or worthless, what are your main reference points for winning that argument?
Well, if you want to get historical, you just say, how about the last, 6,000 or 7,000 years of human history? Somewhere along the way, gold has always been able to hold its value. I wrote an article not too long ago, because we're all locked down because of the virus and everything. So nobody's traveling, or you don't travel very far. I mean, you go to the grocery store or something. But I wrote an article based on a trip that I took last summer, last August. In fact, I was in London at the British Museum. What do you expect of the British Museum? And I saw these beautiful gold coins. They're about the size of, say, a U.S. gold coin or a Canadian maple leaf, something like that. And they had been dug up in some farm in England about 50 years ago. And they were in a stash that dated from the Roman Empire. And so the British Museum, I take them at their word that they know what they're talking about, said that this amount of value would have been about 4 years worth of pay for a well-regarded Roman centurion soldier of the day. So this was, 2,000 years ago in the days of Julius Caesar. So I did a little bit of math. How much gold is there? How many coins are there? Whatever, 4 years worth. That 4 years worth of gold from 2,000 years ago would be a fairly respectable 4 years worth of pay today for a modern soldier. So right away, there is a couple of data points that would give you the idea that you can preserve value over time with gold. Now, if you don't plan to live for 2,000 years, you're just worried about the next 20 or the next 30 or 40. Again, it's the same thing. If you go back to, say, 1971, when Richard Nixon took the U.S. off of the gold standard, and gold was, $32 an ounce. If you do all the math and you adjust for inflation over the last almost 50 years, the last 49 years, much of what you could have bought back then for, $32 an ounce, you can buy today at more or less around $1,800 an ounce. So 32, 1,800. It's a factor of about 60. We'll adjust a little bit for the little onesies and twosies there, but gold has been a preserver of wealth for 2,000 years, back to the days of ancient Rome, for the last 50 years since the days of Richard Nixon. And then another thing that I would just say, in the last 6 months or so, gold has gained about 16% in terms of the dollar value. Now, another way of looking at that is that the U.S. dollar has declined about 16% in terms of its ability to buy gold or represent gold. So if your money is declining at a rate of 16% every 6 months, it's going to take you 3 years for your currency, to become worthless. Now, that probably won't happen that way. Things don't work exactly linearly, but at the same time, while we've been cooped up in the COVID situation for the last, since February, March, whenever you sort of went into your house and closed the door, turned the keys, and started cooking your beans and rice, since in the last 6 months, the U.S. dollar has declined in its purchasing power by about 16%. Now, you can adjust and say, well, gasoline is cheaper and whatever. Gasoline's cheaper, toilet paper is more expensive, all these things. But really, the dollar has been declining and gold has been going up. And this is a symptom of the macroeconomic problems that are plaguing the US, Canada, pretty much all the rest of the world. You'd have to really find a special country that hasn't been affected by this at a monetary level.
At our conference in January, you had mentioned what Russia thought about the USD, which is, it's going to crash.
Putin says the dollar is going to collapse soon. Maybe he's wrong. Then again, maybe he's right.
But I've had a lot of people on the channel lately that say USD is the only currency worth holding. I know that you've mentioned, of course, the decline in purchasing power. What do you think is the future for USD?
It's a mixed situation. The US dollar is the world's global trade currency. It doesn't just go away. It doesn't just vanish like a puff of smoke. Much of the world's trade, is conducted in dollars when country A and country B trade with each other, whether it's, selling iron ore and rubber or trees or cars or electronics or whatever. They condition much of that trade in US dollar terms. And so there are dollars out there. There are immense amounts of debt in the world, in the hundreds of billions, in the trillions level of debt in the world, denominated in US dollars. And so when a company, when a government overseas has to pay interest, pay the coupon on the bond, pay back the payments on the loan, whatever, those payments are denominated in US dollars. So what does that do for the dollar? That means that, yes, people are attracted to the dollar because they need dollars to make their payments. It's the currency that everybody uses. I mean, for as much as the Iranians don't like the U.S., for as much as the Chinese are, bitter about things with the U.S., for as much as the Russians are, taciturn, just, reluctant to, get too deep with the U.S., they still need the dollar. They can talk about, we're de-dollarizing and everything, and they are, but they still need the dollar at the end of the day. So yes, the dollar is important, and people need the dollar. People want the dollar across the world. But while the whole world is using the dollar, here at home, what's that expression from the from book of Matthew? A man's foes shall be they of his own house. Look at Washington D.C. Look at the people who run and manage the U.S. economy. They are absolutely killing the currency. This is literally a goose that ought to lay golden eggs, but they're strangling it with, fiscal mismanagement and with just this sort of sense that dollars are wealth. Dollars are not wealth. They're just a way of measuring wealth. And if you have the same amount of wealth and you have lots and lots of more dollars, then the amount of wealth that goes per dollar is less and less, which gets us back to what we talked about a few minutes ago about that 16% decline of the purchasing power of a dollar just in the last 6 months, as opposed to, say, gold.
I've been asking everyone this. You're in the U.S. Will the 2020 election have an effect on gold price?
Yes, it will, because there are just many reasons. In 2016, in the lead up to the election between Hillary and Trump, the price of gold actually went down, and gold mining shares went down. Like I said earlier, the Brexit in July was the high water mark for about a week and a half after Brexit was the high water mark, and then gold and the gold shares and everything went down until the day of the election, because everybody thought Hillary was going to win. In a sense, this knowledge that 90% of the people had, 96% of the people had, whatever, this absolute fact written on granite tablets by the iron finger of God, that Hillary was going to win, that took the risk out of the election. And so when there's less risk, things tend to settle down, including the price of gold. I think we're going to see that again in a different way. It's the same formula, but it's going to be applied a different way in the next 6 months. So between now and November, is there a lot of risk to the economy in terms of who wins, who doesn't win? Yeah, there's a hell of a lot of risk in my view. So what happens when people are nervous about risk? Well, they start to, shade, and they start to scooch over towards the exit. If you think the whole building's going to burn down. Do you want to sit in the middle of the hall, or do you want to sit at a table near the exit door? I think it is a negative factor for the value of the dollar. It's a positive factor for the prospects of gold and gold mining shares.
I know you're super keen on the Yukon in Canada's north. Why is that?
Okay, first of all, I'm a geologist by background. I mean, we were talking before we came on about the Navy. I spent time in the Navy and lots of other things. But I mean, I studied geology.
Geologist.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. If you insist, I'll even say where I studied. I studied it at Harvard University back in the days before great inflation and everything else. I mean, you actually had to know how to do your math and your physics. You still do. So yes, I'm a real live geologist. First of all, I love the geology of the Yukon. I mean, in terms of just how the Earth has moved around and evolved over the past, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, and in the Yukon even there's some old stuff, some billions of year old rock. How it all came together up there is fabulous. That's number one. You got to love the geology, because the geology is where the materials are. Secondly, the Yukon is a very well governed, well run jurisdiction. I mean, we talk about jurisdictional risk. You go to different countries of the world, you go to different provinces, different states, different areas of the world, and you can cross the border from one point to another point. The geology doesn't really care, where some human being drew the line, but the ability to get things done does depend upon which side of the line you're standing. And so the Yukon it's a great jurisdiction where the government is, it's firm but fair, and you understand where they're coming from. It's a place where in the mining industry and any large industry or extraction, you have to have what they call social license. You've got to get along with the people who are there. In Canada, it's the First Nations, in many, many, many places. The First Nations in the Yukon are more than willing to work with people to get things done. And it's a very mutually supportive situation. You go up there, you treat people well, you treat people fairly. So we got great geology, we got a great jurisdiction, you got good social license, you've got roads, you've got power, you've got airports. The Yukon is really a combination of terrific factors. And then I suppose you could say good things attract good people. You've got a multitude of companies up there that are just terrific companies. I mean, I'm not saying that every single company in the Yukon is fabulous, but there are some that are just head and shoulders, way, way, way up here in terms of the quality of management, the quality of the technical staff, just sort of the crispness of execution. Just they're not going to jerk you around, take forever to get things done. It's just they get in there, they do their work. They're honest about it. If they find good things, they tell you. Everybody wants to tell you when they find good things. If something hits, if something misses, though, they're honest enough to say, then something happened. And, okay, that's fine. What's plan B? What's the next step? So that's why I like the Yukon.
Now, exploration companies in general, obviously a little bit higher risk. What are the 3 things you look for in exploration deals?
Well, yeah, I'm not one of those people who just sort of bunches everything together. I mean, I try to look at every company as a discrete idea. I mean, and what is the geology that they're claiming? What do they have? And then just focusing on that. What is the geology to the best anybody would know? And then when the company comes along, the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that they actually have a good title to their claims. Did you really, did you buy the claims at some bar, some saloon down the street, or, is it all nicely wrapped up? Is your paperwork done? You got to get the legalisms correct. And then it has to do with management. One of the great things you look for in management is, what have they done before? Have they been successful in the past? Who are they associated with? Who is successful? Who's backing them? That kind of a thing, because there's a lot of screening process that goes on in this industry. People with money give it to people who need the money. And funny thing about these investors, they want their money back at the end of the day. So you're looking for people who've been successful. And you're putting together a whole story. So when you say, what do you look for in a company? I look for all of that. Is it there? Is it mostly there? Is it kind of there? Is it not there? And the idea is that you keep an eye on what's going on. You're putting your eggs into a basket, but like Mark Twain said, you put your eggs in a basket, but you got to watch that basket. So that's the general approach
the whole puzzle, putting the pieces together. And it sounds like you really enjoy doing your due diligence, which I guess is when people come to you. I know that you're a fan of Rockhaven. And before we bring on Matt, you put these pieces of the puzzle together. How did that fit together for you with Rockhaven?
There's so many ways to approach it. But I first encountered Rockhaven probably about 5 years ago. I visited the site about 4 years ago. In fact, this is 2020. I visited the site in 2016. I remember going there, and we jumped off the helicopter, and this really nice, really friendly guy walked up, and he shook everybody's hand, and he looked everybody in the eye, and he said, welcome to our site. And as one of the first things that he did was he gave us all an orientation and a safety brief about working around his camp. And I, as an old Navy guy, I want the safety brief. So the first thing that this fella did, it was Matt Turner, was he gave us a safety brief. I thought, oh, okay, this guy's on the ball. Everything that I was doing there with boots on the ground, walking along the hills, walking along the little trails, little rig roads and such they had there. Everything just had a positive feel to it, but then also, when we get into looking at the geology of what he had, it was like, whoa, this thing is fabulous. This thing is fabulous. So there I am. I'm in the Yukon, which I like. It's got great geology, great jurisdiction, great First Nations relations. And here I am at, sort of ground zero of a really great prospect. I just had a really good feeling about this. And then I've followed Rockhaven very closely for 4 years. And they just keep coming up with, good ideas, better models, better drilling, more gold. And then just in a very anecdotal sort of way, it's this sort of a hill kind of a thing. But so everything around this hill is a stream with gold in it. And now if you do a little bit of thinking, if you learned a little bit about this concept called gravity, you would know that the gold in the stream came down from above the hill. So here's a hill full of gold, and over the hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years, it's eroded down into these streams, and now the placer miners are getting it. And then what we find is that as you drill up the hill, there's a whole bunch of gold there. And so there's Rockhaven, fabulous company, great people.
We bring Matt on and talk to him a little bit.
Where's Matt? Get that rascal out of
here. All right, let's bring him on. All right, CEO and President Matt Turner joining us now. Matt, I have a few questions for you, and then I'll let Byron hop in and take over.
Yeah, go ahead, Georgia.
For the viewers, can you give us a super brief, high-level overview of Rockhaven?
Yeah, okay, so Rockhaven is focused 100% on its flagship Plaza Gold Silver project located in southern Yukon. The project hosts one of the highest grade plus 1 million ounce gold deposits ever discovered in the history of the Yukon. And we actually just put out news yesterday on an updated PEA that shows a very robust deposit, long-lived mine life, and we're really excited about the results of it.
It's awesome. Yeah, I did see that news release yesterday. And so Byron and I have just been talking about the Yukon a ton, and we've seen big success stories, of course, like Victoria Gold.
Yeah.
What do you think the Yukon offers that other jurisdictions don't?
Well, it's an awesome combination of support. So effectively, everyone in the Yukon likes mining. It's, as they say, it's part of their DNA. Incredible exploration potential. A lot of it really hasn't been properly looked at. And, just the developability as demonstrated by Victoria. I see today they just announced their updated guide, or their maiden guidance numbers. So up to 100,000 ounces produced before the end of the year. So it's exciting times for the Yukon for sure.
And what can investors see as catalysts for Rockhaven this summer? I know you just released news yesterday.
Yeah, I think it'll be coming off the back of that news. Lots of catalysts. So we're going to get the drills starting to turn in 2 weeks, it sounds like, August 1st. And we're going to really, I think, focus on, well, a number of things, but one's going to be the discovery potential, because we've got all these amazing targets, either adjacent to the known zones that are in the resources and now the PEA, but also some of the outboard targets that most of which have never been tested by drilling. And we built these targets up over the last couple of years, and they're incredibly compelling. So we look forward to setting the drills loose shortly here and get some awesome, exciting news out of the market.
Well, I will pass the mic to Byron for some questions.
Okay, well, greetings, Matt. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too, Byron.
I'm only sorry that it's not in person, because we've had many a good time together, out in the field or at various conferences and talking about things. So Matt, you gave a real quick overview of what's going on, but for people out there who are, perhaps knowledgeable about, the industry, but not so much about Rockhaven, and then also for people who may really be new to the whole idea of investing in gold, and especially in juniors. Let's talk about that for just a minute. You're a junior explorer, although I would say you're a very advanced junior explorer. You're not just out there sort of looking for brown stains on the hillside. You're way, way, way beyond that. But you mentioned Victoria Gold in my previous discussion with Georgia. We didn't talk about Victoria, but Victoria is a tremendous success story. Why don't you just give a moment or two to explain what did Victoria do that has been really remarkable, and do it in the Yukon, obviously.
Yeah, well, in the course, and again, it's I think if John McConnell was talking, he'd probably say there, it's been a overnight success story, 10 years in the making, or however long it's been. But the team there at Victoria has done a phenomenal job from, just over the course of, it's probably been about only 2 years or so from when they started the development, probably less actually, 18 months. And now, pouring the first gold a couple months ago and announcing commercial production on Canada Day, very fitting. So it was amazing kind of for everyone to see. And one of the neat things that I see when I even just go up, even just up to Whitehorse, say up in the Yukon, the amount of wealth it's already created. And that's a really cool thing to see on the ground, where there's so many jobs that are being made through that mine, and it's that's all part of the process, right? The local communities have to benefit, and especially in this day and age, they end up prospering off this because there's so much focus on not only local employment, but keeping as many dollars at home, right, where the gold is being actually produced.
Well, it started with a really good deposit, that they identified, that they drilled up, that they built the models, and they built themselves an ore body model. And then Victoria, through John McConnell and his team, were able to raise enough money to do what they did. And just add a little bit of color commentary to what you said about them. At one point, they had something like over 800 full-time equivalent jobs just based on this one construction project. They were spending, at one point, a couple $1 million a day. They were among the largest, if not at one point, the largest capital expenditure project in all of Canada, for a while they were doing some of that. I mean, obviously, it's all built now, so they're not spending that $1 million a day. But now, let's get back to Rockhaven. Looking at a success like Victoria, where is Rockhaven on that spectrum? Where would you put yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. We, after this PA that we just put out, now it's signaling that we can take that deposit through pre-feasibility. So that's probably still, it'll actually could potentially go quite quickly, maybe 1.5 years to take the project through pre-feas, say 2 years just to be on the safe side with everything that's going on out there in the world with the COVID situation. But yeah, as we progress, it'll be really exciting to see really how fast we can take this to production, because one of the things that we have in our favor, just like Victoria did, was we're already in a developed area. Dublin Gulch, where Victoria's mine is, it was already active placer mining operations. That had been placer mined since basically 1898 when placer gold was first discovered. And that's the same for our neck of the woods. There's actually a couple old hard rock mines within about 8 kilometers of our mine, or of our exploration site, of our resources. But also all the creeks have got placer operations on them. So I think you can get, it's almost like, I like to think it's where, the world wants us to build mines is in areas like that, right?
Well, the old saying, the best place to build a mine is next to another mine.
Exactly.
Before you came on, George and I were talking about the placer mining all around, the Claza deposit. And you made a really good point. I want to reemphasize that. It's been mined for well over 100 years, 120 years. So there are roads there, which means you don't have to get a permit to build a new road.
Yeah.
There's access there's access to electric power, which means that's a huge savings in terms of building out. And so a lot of the basic infrastructure is already there. This is not a truly remote site on the far side of nowhere. In terms of the deposit, for the people who aren't familiar with Rockhaven, how many ounces do you have? Are you advertising at this point? What's the quality of your ore model and of the ounces that you say you have?
Yeah, currently we're sitting at 1.2 million ounces gold and another 28 or so million ounces of silver. There's lead and zinc as well in the system, and when you put them all together and account for recoveries, you're looking at 1.62 million ounces at about the 5 gram gold equivalent number. So it's it's a pretty impressive overall number. The one amazing thing, though, and this kind of gets back to an earlier question that you had about potential investors into the junior gold sector. Like the neat thing about investing in the junior gold is that it gives you gives an investor a lot of leverage to ounces in the ground, right? And in most cases, heavily discounted ounces in the ground. So, say for example, at our site, we're trading at in US dollars, we're about $25 million our company. Yet at the 1.62 million ounces, that equates to about $15 an ounce in the ground. So it's for gold now hitting new highs at $1,800, it's tremendous leverage. Once our project really starts getting recognized by the market, and we continue to advance the project and de-risk it, then in basically all cases, you see that ratio come closer to what's more realistic, right?
So Matt, there are ounces and there are ounces, and when you say 1.6 million, that's, and I know that you have to be careful what you say because you're CEO of the company and everything, but that's the ounces that you've been able to nail down through a certain level of drilling. I mean, is it reasonable to think that by more drilling, by either extending the drilling out or by infill drilling even more, that number would go up?
Yeah. So, and that's the really cool thing with Claza is that, like, we're really quite confident what we have right now is going to get a lot larger. So first off, looking at the main resources, there's basically 4 main subzones, and the deepest holes that we put into them, have been some of the best results that we've got to date on drilling. A couple examples in the central Claza zone, the deepest hole there, and it's only about 450 meters below surface. That cut about 7 meters of almost 12 grams gold. And then in the western BRX zone, one of the other subzones, that's a really nice high-grade zone, that cut about 1.5 meters of 16 grams silver, so about gold, about half an ounce gold, and another 1,400 grams silver. So it's so right there alone, it's telling us that the system isn't waning at depth. It's actually looks like it's getting stronger. So chasing that mineralization down dip is going to be important. Also exploring some of the other subzones that are adjacent, and then some of the targets that we have adjacent to that or distal to that main system is they're pretty exciting. So that's going to be obviously a big focus for both this year and probably into 2021, 22, that drilling in those years.
Now we're in the middle of a bullish market right now. Things have been going really well. And so people, the investing community out there is receptive to the idea of mining companies in general, gold miners and junior gold miners. So you have some money in the bank. And so what is your drilling plan, or what is your plan over the next few months here? We're in the Yukon has a certain season when you can do some of this exploration just because of the weather, so what's your plan for the next few months? What should we look for?
Yeah, well, I think we're going to be, because because of the late start with COVID, I think we're going to be going very late into the season. And that's the great thing too about having the road access. We can go into October, November, and still maintain the road open. So that's going to be, I think, one of the big things for this project is to keep it running as long as we can, and to try to maximize the season. And right now, for predicting how many meters we'll get, it's pretty hard to do, but I'm hoping over 10,000 for sure.
Now, I want the people who watch this to understand better, where you're coming from. I would encourage everybody to go to the Rockhaven website and find the presentation, because on your presentation you have a regional map of the area. And why don't you tell the listeners and viewers out there sort of where does your deposit fit into the larger scheme of a trend or of a district? I mean, we're in the middle of a massive fault zone that goes up through the Yukon and deep into Alaska. I mean, there's a lot of geology going on there. There's a heck of a lot of tectonics and mountain building and relative motions and what have you. How does your Claza deposit fit in? And are there some famous names nearby? That's a loaded question, because you know the answer.
So we're in the southeast corner of the Dawson Gold Belt. So the Dawson Gold Belt extends all the way up into Alaska, but a lot of the big names, the big exploration stories over the last decade, say in the Yukon, and all basically really familiar names to people in the space. That's where their projects were located. So first off, the big one is Kaminak. Kaminak is up along trend. They sit about 125 kilometers northwest of us. And of course, Goldcorp bought them for about $500 million back about 3 or 4 years ago. Of course, Goldcorp's been merged with Newmont now. So Newmont owns that. Also, not far away from Kaminak is the White Gold story. And, they're doing really well in the market right now. Their shares trade over $1. And they've got some really neat exploration going on there. I think they're up around 2 million ounces too for their resources. And then one of the big stories too is the Casino deposit. So that's about 75K or so up the trend from us. And actually, more news from today. They just announced the big increase to the resource. So
Western copper and gold. Yeah.
Copper and gold, yeah, and that's a monster porphyry deposit. So we're definitely in the land of giants. Also on the mining side, Minto is not far away from us. It's about 50 kilometers to the north, and that's an active mine right now too. So lots of good stuff going on in the district.
I'm not going to ask you this question. I'm just going to say this because I don't want to ask you an embarrassing question. I'm just going to say that I happen to know that you and the First Nations of the Yukon have a wonderful relationship. You are extremely respectful towards the First Nations, and they in turn work well with you. You don't need to answer this or nod your head, or you don't need to do anything. I'm just telling the people out there who are listening that from my personal knowledge and personal experience, you have a very, very fine relationship with the First Nations up there, and it's all because you have worked so hard to make it that way in terms of your ethics and your honesty and just the fundamental values that you brought to the company. With that, I'm not going to ask you any more questions. Well, I think we ought to just end it on a happy note like that. We live in this world of COVID, and Matt, you've got a great company out there with great people. You've worked very hard, and put together a great project. I'm really pleased to be able to speak with you.
Wonderful. Matt, it was a real pleasure to have you here today. And where
Thanks,
can
Georgia.
people, no worries, where can people learn more about Rockhaven? And if you could share those ticker symbols with us as well.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so we trade RK on the venture exchange, and you can find more information at our website, www.rockhavenresources.com.
Beautiful. And Byron, where can our viewers hear more from you?
Well, I write a newsletter. It's a free newsletter, by the way. It doesn't even cost you anything. It's called Whiskey and Gunpowder. It talks about all sorts of things. We talk about energy and mining and just sort of the state of the world. It's a product of Agora Financial, AGORA. You can also find a group called St. Paul Publishing, St. Paul, like St. Paul, and look for it. Go St. Paul Whiskey Gunpowder, and you will find a link to that. If you just do St. Paul Whiskey, you'll find a distillery in Minnesota, but St. Paul Whiskey Gunpowder, and that'll take you to the site.
Yeah, it's a super fun newsletter. I've really enjoyed reading it. Well, thank you guys both so much. Really excited to see where Rockhaven goes this summer. And Byron, a real pleasure to chat with you.
It's big. Thank you.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Thanks, Georgia. Thanks, Byron.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe to our channel. You can follow Cambridge House at Cambridge on Twitter. And if you click the link in the pinned comment below, you can receive our weekly newsletter to your email. Thanks again.